My mother, Margaret Caldwell, had orchestrated this evening with a smile, promising a family discussion over dinner. I sat at the table, the scent of lasagna hanging in the air, thick and heavy. Nathan, my brother, leaned forward, smirking. "We wanted to tell you now, so there's no confusion later. Everything goes to us. Everything." The words slammed into me like a freight train. My heart stuttered, my fingers tightening around my glass. "Excuse me?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, though a cold weight was already forming in my gut. Naomi, my younger sister lounging beside him, twirled a strand of her perfectly styled hair around one manicured finger, her lips curling in amusement. "Mom and Dad finalized the will," she said, her tone syrupy sweet with a blade hidden underneath. "The house, the lake cottage?" She lifted a shoulder, feigning sympathy. "All of it belongs to us now." I turned to my mother, expecting some kind of contradiction, some assurance that this was a misunderstanding. But Margaret Caldwell only sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Ava," she said, her smile fading into a tight, unreadable expression. "We wanted you to hear it from us directly." She folded her hands neatly on the table, her voice shifting into that patronizing, well-rehearsed tone she always used when she needed me to accept something cruel without protest. "Your father and I have decided that Nathan and Naomi need more stability. You've already built a successful life for yourself. We don't have to worry about you. We don't have to worry about you." The words echoed in my skull, each one a fresh betrayal. I turned to my father, Henry Caldwell, searching for hesitation, doubt, even a flicker of guilt. But all I found was cowardice. He stared at the silverware in front of him as if it were suddenly fascinating, refusing to meet my eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm, as though his decision had already been set in stone. "You have to understand, Ava," he murmured, folding his hands together. "Your mother and I are proud of you. You've done exceptionally well. But your brother and sister?" He trailed off, sighing, as if the thought itself exhausted him. "They're still finding their footing. They need this more than you do." "Something," inside me snapped. Finding their footing? Was he joking? Nathan had spent years bouncing between failed business ideas, burning through thousands of dollars, my dollars, every time one of his ventures crumbled. Naomi had never held a real job, surviving off a string of boyfriends, impulsive shopping, sprees, and my mother's constant indulgence. And yet, I was the one being punished for my success. I swallowed, back the burn of humiliation, the hot rising sting of betrayal in my chest. My entire life, I had done everything they asked. Mortgage payments, covered, Nathan's tuition changes, paid, Naomi's ridiculous whims, funded. I had sacrificed vacations, personal goals, my own stability for them. And now, they sat across from me, smug and victorious, as if I were nothing more than a discarded checkbook they no longer needed. I took a slow, measured breath, trying to keep the fury from shaking my voice. "So let me get this straight," I said, my tone sharp as glass. "Because I actually made something of myself, I'm being cut out entirely?" Nathan scoffed, leaning back, his arms crossing over his chest. "Oh, come on. No one forced you to help. You just liked playing the hero." Naomi giggled, her eyes glittering with cruelty. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would love you as much as they love us." The words slammed into me harder than anything else. Silence, stretched across the room, thick and suffocating. No one corrected her. No one reprimanded her for the sheer malice in her voice. My parents sat there, stone-faced and complicit, their silence more damning than any justification they could have given. I had spent years convincing myself that my love, my efforts, my sacrifices mattered, that if I just gave a little more, they'd finally see me, finally choose me. But they never had, and they never would. I could feel my mother watching me, waiting, for me to submit, to accept my role as the expendable one, the dependable one, the one who never fought back. I met her gaze, and for the first time in my life, I smiled. Not in defeat, not in sorrow, in realization. "You're right, Nathan," I said, my voice steady, ice cold with finality. No one forced me. I pushed my chair back and stood, ignoring their startled expressions. And from today onward, no one ever will, again. A sharp silence fell over the table. Margaret's mouth tightened. "Eva!" But I was already walking away, Esau. I grabbed my coat from the hallway. The voices inside blurred into meaningless noise. The front door slammed shut behind me with a definitive thud. I stepped outside, inhaling the cold Oregon air, the crisp bite of the night cutting through the raw ache in my chest. I had walked into that dinner expecting family. I left knowing I had none. And for the first time in my life, I was finally free. The cold night air hit me like a slap to the face as I stepped off the porch, my heels clicking against the pavement with sharp finality. The door slammed shut behind me, cutting off the voices inside, voices that no longer mattered. I didn't look back, not at my mother's pursed lips, not at my father's downcast gaze, not at Nathan's smug grin or Naomi's sneering amusement. They had made their choice, and so had I. The scent of lasagna clung to my clothes, thick and suffocating. That same meal, once a childhood comfort, now felt like a cruel joke. How fitting. A final supper before the death of every illusion I had clung to about this family. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with the force of my rage. The city lights of Seattle blurred through my windshield, headlights streaking like distant ghosts as I sped down the freeway. My mind churned, replaying every sacrifice, every compromise, every dollar. I had given up for them. A decade of devotion, erased with a single sentence. I had worked tirelessly, skipped vacations, delayed my own dreams so they could live comfortably. Every time Nathan failed, every time Naomi indulged another whim, I had been there to clean up the mess. And for what? To be discarded like a used-up ATM? A bitter laugh tore from my throat. How blind had I been? Had I really convinced myself that money could buy their love? That loyalty and duty would ever be repaid with the same? Enough. Enough. Pulling into my apartment's underground garage, I killed the engine and sat in silence, breathing heavily. My pulse hammered in my ears. No more. With steady, deliberate movements, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The numbers glowed brightly against the dark screen, a testament to every ounce of effort I had poured into their comfort. My thumb hovered over the recurring transactions, 1-800 Parents Mortgage 600 Utilities. Hundreds more in miscellaneous transfers, each labeled simply Family Help. A lifetime of obligation choking me like a chain. Not anymore. With one decisive tap, I canceled the mortgage payment. Gone. Another tap. Utilities terminated. The app flashed confirmation messages, cold and impersonal. But to me, they were a declaration of war. A slow exhale left my lips as a strange sensation settled over me. Liberation. They had taken and taken, never once imagining a world where I might stop giving. Well, that world had just arrived. I leaned back against the driver's seat, closing my eyes as a wave of exhaustion hit me. Not from regret, from release. I had spent my entire life believing I owed them something. Tonight, I was finally free. The first voicemail came the next morning, piercing through the quiet of my apartment like a knife. "Ava, this is your mother. You need to stop this nonsense and call me back immediately." I stared at my phone, expressionless. Nonsense, that's what she called it. not betrayal. Not cruelty. Nonsense. I let the message play out, her voice thick with manufactured disappointment. Family doesn't treat each other like this. You don't just walk away. We took care of you and now you're turning your back on us? Took care of me? When? My stomach twisted as I listened to the same tired script, the same emotional blackmail she had wielded against me my entire life. You owe us. We raised you. You wouldn't be where you are without us. I deleted the message without a second thought. Then came the texts, one after another. Margaret was relentless, switching tactics each time. One message was angry, accusing me of being selfish. The next was pitiful, pretending to be hurt and heartbroken. When I refused to respond, Nathan and Naomi swooped in like vultures, sensing weakness. Nathan. Wow. Really? You're seriously abandoning your own family because of money? Naomi. It must be nice, being so cold-hearted. I guess all that success turned you into a selfish bitch. I felt nothing. Not guilt, not sadness, not regret, just a cold, steely satisfaction as I watched their words roll in like a tide, desperate, furious, clawing for control. But the panic was setting in for them now. Without me, there was no safety net. By the third day, Margaret cracked. We can't pay the mortgage, Eva. Her voice trembled, but I knew the difference between real fear and performance. Your father and I, we might lose the house. A slow, deliberate exhale left my lips. Not my problem. By the end of the week, Naomi sent the final dagger. You'll regret this. When we're gone, don't come crying to us. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, with the simplest motion, I blocked them all. The silence that followed was a strange, unfamiliar thing, a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. But deep down, I knew them too well. They wouldn't let me go that easily. The text came 3 weeks after I cut them off, brief and devoid of the usual theatrics. Family meeting tonight. You owe it to us to be there. I stared at the glowing words, my stomach twisting. Oh, that single word clung to me like a parasite, a cruel joke dressed as an obligation. They had spent years draining me dry. And now, when the well had run dry, they still dared to demand my presence. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted the message and never looked back. But deep down, some reckless part of me wanted to see their faces when they realized I was no longer theirs to control. Fine. Pulling into the driveway felt surreal, like stepping onto the battlefield of a war I had already won. Nathan's sleek sports car and Naomi's obnoxiously expensive sedan sat side by side, gleaming under the porch lights like monuments to their entitlement. I stepped out of my car, my pulse steady, my expression unreadable. The front door opened before I could knock. Margaret stood there, forced warmth stretched across her face like cheap paint over rotting wood. Ava, she said stiffly, stepping aside. Glad you decided to come. The house felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because I had, and then I saw Aunt Linda, seated quietly in the corner. That was new. She rarely got involved. I took my seat across from my parents. Nathan and Naomi sauntered in, both eyeing me with open hostility. Henry was the first to speak, clearing his throat as if this were some business negotiation. We called this meeting to clear the air. His voice was as rigid as his posture. Your mother and I thought you'd see reason by now. Obviously, we were mistaken. I bit back a laugh. See reason? Margaret leaned forward, voice dripping with that exasperated motherly tone she always used when I refused to be manipulated. Ava, we raised you better than this. Family takes care of each other. You are the eldest. It was your responsibility to help. Nathan scoffed. Jesus, you act like we put a gun to your head. Naomi smirked. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with playing the martyr, you'd actually have your own life by now. The heat rose in my chest, but I refused to let them see it. Aunt Linda shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. I met Henry's gaze, my voice calm, sharp, final. So that's what this is? One last chance to get me back in line? His jaw tightened. If you walk out now, Eva, don't expect to be welcome back. Silence hung thick and suffocating. A choice. Their final weapon. I pushed my chair back slowly, standing with a measured grace. Let my gaze drift over each of them, drinking in their cold indifference, their cruel amusement, their smug self-assurance. I've never felt welcome here anyway. And then, I walked out for the last time. For the first time in years, my life was finally my own. The silence from my family was a strange, almost unnatural thing, like stepping outside after a storm and realizing the wind had stopped howling. 3 weeks passed. I threw myself into work at Caldwell and Nash Construction, overseeing the final phases of a high-profile medical complex in Sacramento. I was thriving. No sudden bank withdrawals. No frantic late-night calls begging for help. No financial burdens shackling me to their endless needs. They were gone, or so I thought. It was late Friday night when I returned from my trip. Exhaustion, weighing on me as I dragged my luggage down the apartment hallway. Then, I saw it. My front door, completely sealed shut. Thick, hardened industrial foam clogged. Every crack and crevice, expanding grotesquely like a tumor of dried cement. My breath caught in my throat. Panic hit first. Had someone tried to trap me inside, break in? But then, as I ran my fingers over the rough texture, my panic shifted. No, this wasn't just vandalism. This was a message. Heart-pounding, I rushed inside the building's security office and demanded the footage. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I fast-forwarded through hours of nothing until he appeared. Nathan. Baseball cap low. Hood pulled, up. But there was no mistaking the arrogant saunter, the satisfied smirk as he sprayed my door shut, making sure to cover every possible entry point. He was laughing. A slow, burning rage unfurled inside me. This wasn't just retaliation, this was pure vindictive hatred. He wanted to punish me, to humiliate me. He wanted me to feel powerless. But he had made one fatal mistake. I called Aunt Linda that night, my hands still trembling. Her voice was calm, but firm. Eva, if you don't hold him accountable now, he'll never stop. Protecting him isn't kindness, it's enabling. She was right. I was done enabling. The police report was filed by morning. Nathan was facing property damage charges. The backlash from my family was instant and vicious. My phone erupted, with calls. Margaret screeching, Henry seething, Naomi firing off texts dripping with venom. Then came Henry's final call, his voice tight with forced composure. What will it take for you to drop this, Eva? The power shifted in that moment, and I felt it. $3,000. My voice was cold, unwavering. The exact cost of repairs. That's extortion, he barked. I exhaled slowly. No, Henry, that's consequences. The next morning, $3,000 hit my account, labeled bitterly as final payment. Nathan had tried to ruin me. Instead, he had just given me proof that I had finally won. At first, I thought the silence meant they had finally given up. That maybe, just maybe, they had accepted reality. But of course they hadn't. I should have. Known Margaret wouldn't go down without a fight. The whispers started trickling back, through mutual connections, distant relatives and old acquaintances, twisted versions of the truth, warped beyond recognition. Eva abandoned her family. She's trying to make her parents homeless. After everything we did for her, she turned her back on us the moment we needed her most. It was a brilliantly crafted ally, that kind that played on people's sympathies, painting Margaret and Henry as the poor, struggling parents left destitute by their heartless, selfish daughter. And Nathan and Naomi not even mentioned, of course. The rage that simmered in my chest didn't burn wild. It was cold, controlled, calculated. If Margaret wanted to play the victim, I was about to give her an audience. That night, I sat down at my laptop and began typing. Every payment, every sacrifice, every time I had bailed them out, covered their mortgage, paid off their debts, funded their endless indulgences, I listed it all. No embellishments, no exaggerations, just the truth. And then, for the final blow, I attached the security footage of Nathan vandalizing my home. I hit post. The reaction was instant, explosive. The comments flooded in, some horrified at what I had endured, others clutching their pearls, scolding me for airing private family matters. But I didn't care, because now, the truth was out. I was still watching. The notifications roll in when my phone rang. "Margaret," I answered without hesitation. "How dare you humiliate us like this?" she shrieked, her voice so sharp it cut through the receiver. "You have no right!" I let her rage, let her flail, let her throw every accusation she could grasp at. And when she finally stopped to catch her breath, I spoke, my voice calm, cutting, final. "You abandoned me long before I walked away." Silence, a crack in the armor. Then, her final dagger, a venomous hiss dripping with bitterness. "You've destroyed this family." I smiled, not in joy, not in triumph, but in understanding. "No, Margaret, you did." And then I hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. No more frantic calls, no more guilt-drenched voicemails, no more demands wrapped in obligation. They were finally gone, and without my financial lifeline, they sank. Nathan's reckless spending caught up with him. His credit cards maxed out, his debts piling higher than his arrogance. Naomi, still chasing her influencer pipe dream, found herself without a safety net. Her lavish lifestyle crumbling around her. Margaret and Henry, forced into reality. Their mortgage loomed over them, their carefully crafted facade of comfort shattering. Margaret took a job at a local diner, the same woman who once scoffed at common labor. Henry picked up shifts at a hardware store, his pride eroding one customer at a time. And me? I flourished. The chains they had wrapped around me for years were broken, and I soared. A major promotion, a corner office with a view of the city I had built my life in. For the first time, my paycheck belonged to me, so I did something I had always put off. I booked my dream trip to Italy. I stood on a sunlit balcony in Florence, watching the city glow beneath me, and breathed in the sweet air of a life that was truly finally mine. When I returned, I rebuilt. I joined a hiking group, reclaiming the weekends I had once sacrificed. I met Daniel, whose quiet strength and easy smile reminded me of something I had nearly forgotten. Kindness without conditions. One evening, Aunt Linda showed up at my door, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. She smiled as she handed me one, eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in anyone in my family before. Pride. "Family isn't about blood," she said softly. "It's about who truly sees your worth." I stood at my window that night looking over the glowing Portland skyline and felt something I had never known before. Peace. Their rejection had once felt like a blade to the heart. Now I saw it for what it truly was, my greatest liberation, and for the first time in my life, I was free.